Hi, I'm John Patrick from the Dough Right Test Kitchen, and welcome to episode 4 of my video series, Dough Talk, where we dive into all things dough. Today's topic, control your butter or fat temperature and stay in control of your dough. Butter, and in some cases lard, isn't just there in the recipe, but it's actually a structural element of getting the best result from your recipe. When you control the butter or fat temperature, you are in control of your dough. If you let the butter get away from you, your dough will follow, and you'll end up with a greasy dough ball and a tough, dry, final end texture or result. So let's get right into it. The sweet dough arm, which is the attachment that I designed specifically for controlling your butter incorporation for your KitchenAid or Hobart stand mixer, is the perfect tool for precise butter incorporation. But you still have to match the butter temperature to the dough type that you're working with. Yeasted doughs fall into two basic categories: lean and enriched. And within the enriched category, we have low, moderate, and high butter or fat enrichment. It's easy to calculate the fat enrichment for any recipe. Just take the total weight of the butter or the lard or total fats for the entire recipe and divide it by the total flour weight for that recipe and express the end result in a percentage. Let's do a quick math example. In traditional French brioche, for example, you might have 500 grams of flour and 250 grams of butter. So just take the 250 divided by the 500, that comes back at 0.5, and represent that as a percentage. So you would say that your French brioche is a 50% rich or fat enriched recipe. Once you have the enrichment percentage, you'll know exactly how to handle the butter incorporation for that particular recipe. So let's go over each of the types of lean and sweet doughs to discuss and learn about the optimal butter incorporation temperature. Lean yeasted doughs are defined as doughs that have less than 10% fat enrichment. Examples: sourdough, pizza, baguettes, any of your artisan or rustic breads. These are all in your lean category. And you're typically going to mix those with either a standard or a spiral dough hook. And it really doesn't matter the temperature that you incorporate your fat. You can use room temperature, or you can actually melt the fat, and it won't make any difference in your success or final outcome of a lean dough. The first category of enriched sweet doughs is the low enrichment, and that's defined as somewhere between a 10 and 20% calculated fat enrichment recipe. Examples here would be sandwich bread, dinner rolls, potato bread. You would want to use the sweet dough arm, and you want to use room temperature butter so that it easily rubs or incorporates into the flour with ease. And your final dough temperature should not exceed 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The next category is your moderate enriched sweet doughs. That's going to be in the 20 to 30% fat enrichment. Examples here would be cinnamon rolls, the King's Hawaiian family of buns, Japanese milk breads. Again, you want to use your sweet dough arm, and you want to incorporate the butter that's cool and pliable. So colder than room temperature, but not super cold right out of the fridge. Kind of that in-between zone where it's still pliable to the touch. And here, you want your final dough temperature not to exceed 76 degrees Fahrenheit. So as you can see, the dough temperature end result drops as the fat incorporation climbs. And then our last category is the high or super rich enriched doughs. Those are going to be examples of greater than 30% fat enrichment. French brioche, challah, stollen dough, Danish croissant dough. These are all super rich, high butter enriched doughs. And in these doughs, it's critical that your butter goes in cold, and also your mixing gear is actually pre-chilled. So chill your bowl, chill your sweet dough arm, make sure that your butter's cold right out of the fridge. And as you incorporate the cold butter into the dough, there's so much butter that the chilling effect of the butter going in will actually help maintain and control the dough temperature through the kneading process. Final dough temperature for these high or super rich enriched doughs should not exceed 72 degrees. So there you have it. Lean through low, moderate, and super high enriched doughs. The takeaway here, when you control the butter temperature, you're in control of your dough, and you will achieve optimal results every time. Now it's time for viewer questions, my favorite part of the Dough Talk episodes. Our first question is from Carrie, and she asks, many yeasted recipes call for melted butter. Are they wrong? Why can't I just melt the butter? It's so much easier. Well, Carrie, that's a great question, and it comes up all the time. Melted butter is the workaround when you don't have a sweet dough arm for your stand mixer. The normal, standard, and the spiral dough hook do not incorporate room temperature and cold butter well at all. So the workaround to that is melt the butter and away you go. It seems easy, but your end result will be a bit of a disaster. When the melted butter hits the flour, it creates what I call the grease ball effect. The exterior is a coated envelope of butter, and the inside is a flour ball, and it's not letting the butter incorporate properly and evenly into the flour. And it prevents or slows down your gluten formation. So you have just a bit of a mess, quite frankly. And many bakers compensate for the grease ball effect by adding in more and more flour so they can get the dough easy to handle with their hands and on the board. The problem is when you add additional flour to compensate for the melted butter, your end texture will become dry and tough. It's not a good end result. Get a sweet dough arm for your KitchenAid or Hobart stand mixer and follow the butter temperature guidelines that we've discussed in this video and incorporate solid butter either at room temperature, cool, or cold temperature states into your flour, and you'll get optimal results every time. Remember, control your butter temperature and you stay in control of your dough, and leave melted butter for brownies and muffins, not for enriched sweet doughs. Great question though. Our next viewer question comes from Joseph, and he's making Italian meatballs. Joseph says, when I use my KitchenAid stand mixer with the flat beater attachment to make my Italian meatballs, the fat in the raw meat smeared and created a slippery, fat mess with the meat and the fat being a disaster. What did I do wrong? Joseph asks. The flat beater on your stand mixer was not designed to incorporate ingredients into your raw meats. It was designed specifically for creaming and aerating butter and whipping things to make them light and fluffy. For perfect incorporation of dry spices and wet binders into raw meat, start with cold ingredients, chill your bowl, use a sweet dough arm, and put all your ingredients in the freezer for 10 or 15 minutes prior to mixing. then run on low speed for just 30 to 60 or maybe even 90 seconds at the longest, and the perfect result will be achieved. The sweet dough arm, with its unique shape geometry and cold ingredients, prevents fat smearing and keeps your texture clean. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'll answer your questions that you leave in the comments on future episodes of the Dough Talk series. And next time, we'll finish up this two-part mini-series, and we will look at dough temperature and butter incorporation for American and French pastry and pie doughs, biscuits, shorts, heavy cookie and cracker doughs, and we'll learn about all things sablage. It's a wonderful French sandblasting technique that the sweet dough arm excels at. Remember, if we're not baking in France, we must always bake like we are. Oui, oui.